Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this special World AIDS Day digital performance of Despite These Marks, a HIV/AIDS devised theater piece. A few announcements before we begin. This piece discusses the raw and ongoing experiences of the HIV/AIDS pandemic and may be emotional for some audience members. Viewer discretion is advised. Please refrain from recording of any sort through the duration of this performance. This performance is dedicated to those who are living with HIV/AIDS and to commemorate those who have passed away due to AIDS-related illnesses. Now please, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
HIV. Where do you even begin, you know? There have been so many forms of media that were created in these later days. They attempt to capture the fear that occurred during the AIDS epidemic, but it just really isn't possible. I don't know if I can do it justice.
The first time I heard about HIV, I was working in New York City at the River Hotel. My manager's partner was a nurse at NYU Medical Center. And one day she came up to me and said, "You and your friends, be careful out there. There's a lot of gay guys that have been admitted in the past few months, and they're dying of this gay cancer. They don't know what it is or how it's contracted." And soon it began. It would happen every weekend. I'd go out to the bars and Tom would be gone. Mark would be gone. It's like you'd get diagnosed and then you were gone in a month. It was a much broader, anamorphic kind of destiny. Nobody knew what was going on. The unknown was the scariest part. Did I do something that will make me endure a painful, ugly, and very isolating death?
On October 9th, 2008, I got a phone call at work from my doctor.
I'm going to need you to come in. We need to discuss your test results.
Last time I got a call like this about my routine testing, I ended up freaking out all weekend to find out the stupid thing wasn't even an STD. So when this came around, I wasn't too alarmed.
You need to come to my office.
I can't right now. I'm at work. I can come in after I get out at 6, or I can make an appointment for next week.
I'm only here until 4, and I need to talk to you today.
So she came to my job. I met her outside. We sat in the car, and she told me in the parking lot at my work at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning that I was HIV positive. It was a shock in some respect. No matter how much you try to prepare yourself, you still never expect it. And like, she didn't sugarcoat it or anything. She just kind of looked at me and told me. I didn't cry from the news. I was just taken aback for a minute.
We can talk about this. It's okay to be upset.
No, I have to put this on the back burner.
You need to deal with this.
I need to go back to work, and I need to pretend that nothing has happened because I don't need people knowing something is going on, and I need to deal with this in my own way.
That's my baby brother. We have an odd relationship, and that's putting it mildly. I don't know if you'd call us super close siblings, but we care a lot about each other. That's why when he first came out to me as bisexual, the story was kind of embarrassing. It was probably like 14 years ago, I think. I believe he was about 18 and I was around 21. I was driving him around, and he told me he liked guys. I remember being extremely upset and not saying a single word to him. I just dropped him off and left him somewhere. And it was really selfish and awful of me. But at the time, I was thinking, like, oh my God, like, I'm never going to be an aunt. I'm never going to have nieces and nephews. And he's never going to be normal. And I was thinking, this is ridiculous. This is a phase. He's going to get over it. But he didn't. And as time passed, I became more comfortable with it. And I realized that it was just who he is. He's happy, and honestly, that's all I ever really wanted for him. With me, I really think talking to him about it made me more at ease. And now it's no big deal at all, so.
I met Hal online, but we didn't actually meet until 2009. He was planning on moving back to Pennsylvania and needed a roommate. It just so happened that yours truly needed one too, so I was like, do you want to do this? And he was like, sure, why not? But I have a problem. My car can only fit half of my stuff in it. And that's when my road trip to Vermont happened. After helping him move, and after 10 hours of getting to know each other in real life, we became roommates. We've had some fun times together. We've laughed, we've cried, we've laughed till we cried. I yell at him for leaving glasses on the counter. He deals with my Crown and Coke nights. We go on random bowling trips at 2 a.m. Yeah, don't ask. And here it is, 2015, and we're still roommates and best friends. But nothing more.
Hey, what's up? My name's Patrick. Coming out as a gay man to your family is hard. No, really. Especially when you come from a very religious background and when you're Black. I don't know if you know this, but homosexuality really isn't embraced well within our community. So when I came out to my parents the summer of my junior year, they took it pretty hard. My dad, he sat me down and said,
Life is like a game of baseball. 3 strikes and you're out. The first strike is you're Black. You're a minority. So off the bat, once you came out of your mom, you're basically given a life of struggle. A struggle to be equal to other people. And now you've come out as being gay. So on top of being Black, you have this other stigma you have to deal with. You'll always have to watch yourself and your surroundings. You could be walking down the street and get beat up just because you're gay. That's the second strike.
well, what's the third strike?
If you get AIDS.
So one day at work, I'm sitting at my desk on YouTube. You all know that you do it. When your bosses are out, you're on YouTube. That was me. Anyway, I'm on YouTube and I come across this live stream and it was about World AIDS Day. I'm looking at Alicia Keys and Bono talking about the AIDS epidemic, and I got up and walked into the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was very thin and lost a lot of weight. I knew something was up. I looked in my mouth and saw this thrush on my tongue. I looked it up on Google and saw it was a fungus and a symptom of HIV. I had been in so much denial that I had been using a toothbrush to scrape that fungus off my tongue, which caused a lot of bleeding. That day, that moment, I made the decision to go get tested. So I just left work unannounced. When I got to the hospital,
Why are you here?
to get tested for HIV.
There's a reason why you're here. You must be up to something.
Excuse me?
Are you gay? Are you having unprotected sex?
hell asks someone something like that? Like, right off the bat. Anyway, she did the test. I waited 20 minutes, and those 20 minutes were the longest 20 minutes of my life. She finally came out, and after giving one of the other employees a look, she grabbed me and took me back into the room.
How do you think you did, kiddo?
Kiddo? Are you serious? Girl, I am 22. Really? I just want to know my results.
Your results are positive.
You know, it's funny because I swore to my dad the day that I came out that HIV wouldn't happen. And then it did. It was my third strike.
I had many friends who I have lost to HIV, and each one experienced some form of stigma after their diagnosis. But with Beatrice, it wasn't the same. Of all the demographics, queer women have the least percentage. It wasn't until she was really visibly ill that there was any kind of reaction and people became aware. She didn't even realize she had it. At one point, however, she wondered before she was diagnosed. She said she felt something had taken over her body. And this was before the fact, but she had sensed something was wrong. I'll never forget it. She called me and she seemed agitated, upset. And she rattled off this list of folks that she found out that were in our common circle who were recently diagnosed. The list of names was astonishing. When she got to the end of the list, she said, "And you know who else? Derek." She was absolutely mortified. It didn't really dawn on me until after her diagnosis was finalized that the reason she was upset was because she had had an affair with Derek. Beatrice survived for about 2 years after that. What was also kind of tragic about women like her is that they had such amazing careers. I mean, besides the fact that she was the centerpiece of social gatherings, she was also a very creative woman in a variety of forms, mostly in PR, and the fact that her possible future, the opportunities she had to impact the future were cut short. It was just very sad.
My name is Nico. I'm a freelance worker and a consultant for a New York-based education program.
My name is Monique. I am currently living in Somerville, South Carolina. I'm a mother of 3 boys, a wife. I'm an advocate and an author.
My name is Cecilia. I live in San Francisco. I'm a senior strategist at the Transgender Law Center. I am a woman.
I'm a woman.
I am a woman.
I have HIV.
I have HIV.
At the time, I was a sophomore in college and I was dating this guy and pretty much talking about marriage, and we didn't really set a date, but I got like a promise ring and we were talking about doing it after we finished college.
I was serving in the Army and I found out when I was pregnant with my 3rd child. It was a really happy moment.
I moved to the United States with my family. When we arrived, I headed off to college and I got an education. You know, everything that an obedient son was supposed to do to please their parents. But I realized that I wasn't happy. I decided to share with my mother my desire to transition. She said that I was a disappointment to her and to my father. But I realized that if I continued to not deal with my gender identity, I would probably hurt myself and end my life. So I decided to move to San Francisco, and I believed that I would find my community and my people that would understand me, even if I didn't know really how to understand myself.
In the spring of my sophomore year, April 1st to be exact, I found out I was HIV positive. April Fools.
I had the standard testing that ladies get when they're pregnant. When I got the testing done, I also found out that I was HIV positive. So I found out while I was pregnant.
About a year after I transitioned to a woman, I tested HIV positive. I had contracted it while I was living as a gay man.
It started when I went to the clinic for routine tests, and a week or so later, I had a letter sent to my home saying that I was exposed to HIV. Oh. And the letter wasn't sealed, speaking of stigma. Think about that. Letter, HIV status not sealed. When I think about that, I'm like, this is unbelievable. My friends in New York hear that story and they're like, where the hell did you get tested? We don't do that type of stuff.
When it actually happened to me, I was in total disbelief. I could not believe it, trying to figure out where, why, when, how. At the time I was married, I had just got married, less than a year with my marriage. And here I am trying to enjoy it. We find out we're having a child, and also to find out that I'm HIV positive. I thought it was a dream, like I was just like, I'm ready to wake up out of this dream. But come to find out, it was a reality.
Learning my HIV status was very depressing for me. It was right after my transition, so I thought, I'm being punished for my decisions. I found it very difficult to cope. How could I talk to other people about this? I was already nervous about my gender identity, and now HIV? It would make me look bad. It would make me feel very dirty and unwanted, and I was very afraid that I would be rejected.
Anyway, I went to get tested 2 weeks later because I had to wait 2 weeks for the test results to come back. And when all is said and done, I waited there for my results, and I'm sitting down, and the nurse is in the office filing papers, and she finally turns to me and says,
Positive.
and I was like, oh, I guess she's telling me I can go. So just to get clarity, I said, okay, miss, what are you talking about? Because you're filing papers, I'm sitting here, and you're telling me that I'm positive. What are you talking about? And she responded,
Young lady, you're positive.
I'm sitting there, and in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I really screwed up now. I'm going to die. And then I started crying, and the nurse looked at me and said,
Oh, now why are you crying now? It doesn't make any sense to cry now because you should have been thinking about that when you were doing whatever you were doing.
and I thought, she's right. Maybe I deserve this.
Like I said, I was trying to figure out how, because I was a wife at the time, pregnant, serving my country. I came from a well-rounded family. I'm a preacher's kid. We learned how to treat people right with respect and love, no matter what gender, color, age you are. I didn't know anything too much about drugs, drinking, let alone pretty much a curse word. That's the type of home I grew up in. We just don't do those types of things.
After my moment with the nurse, I went out to the waiting area to see the social worker, and who was much nicer, by the way. And while I'm waiting, my boyfriend walks into the clinic, and he was getting his test results. And he claimed he was coming up there for something else and he didn't have the virus, but turned out he was lying. And I'm like, it's over. It's over.
Hi, you called for my husband? Who is this? I can give him the message. He's not here, but I'd be happy to. An emergency? Well, if it's that serious, why can't you just leave the message with me? Well, I think I have a right to know. I'm his wife. Never mentioned a wife. No, it's fine. I'm fine. Just tell me what's going on. Positive? What do you mean positive? Oh my God.
I relied on self-medicating to really not think about the pain that I was experiencing because I never really addressed that emotional pain. It continued to grow and it became very unbearable, and I started to medicate more and more. I thought I was serving a death sentence and that either HIV was going to take my life or I would find another way that felt more acceptable to me. That all changed when I almost lost my life to two men who tried to sexually assault me. One of them stabbed me. I was bleeding out. But odd as it sounds, in that moment, I did not give up. I realized that I didn't want to end my life, and I realized that I hadn't done what I had set out to do. I felt a need to finish finding my community, and I felt a need to find my way back to my family. I think that was the motivation for me, and I definitely put up a fight then.
Hi, my name is Josh Robbins. I'm a blogger. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm living with AIDS. A year and a half before I found out about my status, I was part of this HIV vaccine program. Every month, I was tested via blood work for HIV, and I was given some counseling. I was very aware of HIV and how it was contracted. I was like the poster boy for it, like literally, I was on a poster for the vaccine study, safe sex and all of that. I was everywhere for a year and a half in Nashville. So much so that when I found out I was positive, there were some of those posters still up. When I was diagnosed as HIV positive, it was kind of like, uh, just put yourself in my place. Put yourself in that situation. You feel like a hypocrite, and I felt really lonely. So I thought I'm going to start a blog. I'm going to create this place for people just like me that we can go there and just find comfort. So I went to my office that morning and I don't know, I sat there probably 2 hours trying to think of a name for this blog. And I mean, what website address do you purchase? I've got HIV now. I I landed on I'm still Josh because I was thinking, what am I trying to say here? And it was exactly that. I am the exact same person I have always been, and I want you to be the exact same person that you've always been. And I want you to know that well, I have HIV. I, I'm a dork. I know it, but you know what? People relate to it. My blog is about reaching out to people living with HIV and calling out the stigma because it's bullshit. It's that simple. It's not hype or a campaign, but a real conversation. This is HIV, and this is what it looks like.
The first person I told was the guy I was last with. We were very good friends. I felt bad for the longest time because he tested positive and I thought I gave it to him. But it actually turned out to be the other way around. I didn't freak out though. With both of us being positive, it made us closer. And it didn't really matter at that point. I'm a very private person. I told people if they needed to know, and when I was ready to tell them. I mean, there were cases I had people find out, but no, I wasn't afraid to tell people. I told them when I was ready and when they were ready.
He was about 25 and I was 28, I think. We were just sitting outside his house, kind of BSing about stuff. But then he told me he had been in the hospital and that he was sick. And then he got kind of weird. So I was like, what's wrong? Like, stop being stupid and just tell me what's going on. Uh, I don't think he wanted to tell me initially, but when he finally did, it was pretty devastating. I try not to be a hugely emotional person, but I couldn't help it. My first reaction was shock. I was crying, I was upset, and I felt awful because he was like, no, don't cry, I'm fine, it's okay. And, here he is, the one who's got the problem, and he's comforting me. It was just completely backwards in my mind.
I've been sexually active since I was 17. And yes, I've had unprotected sex. It's pretty crazy. I've been pretty crazy about it. I mean, it was addicting. I was such a smart ass. I was young, reckless, and had many different opportunities. I've been with many women and men. It doesn't mean I just met a lot of people. I met a lot of people. I slept with a lot of people. I was a very sexually active person. I'm still sexually active. I knew the risks. In one sense, you kind of understand it's going to catch up to you and whatnot, but it's not like it was something I was going for. It's not like a goal in life.
So this freaking guy, he stops talking to me. We had been chatting on Grindr, I don't know, for like 2 weeks or so, and then out of the blue, he just disappears.
Oh shit, man, that sucks. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I didn't want to meet him anyway. I had heard through the grapevine that, well, he was HIV positive.
Really?
Yeah. Sucks for him. Whore.
Good thing you didn't sleep with him. You don't need that shit in your life. I mean, he's not a whore for having HIV, but still, bullet dodged.
What? Do you have HIV?
No, I'm just saying he's not a whore because he has it.
Listen, if getting an incurable disease from having unprotected sex isn't considered something whorish, I'm seriously worried about where this country's going. I mean, in a moral sense.
Come on, man. Don't worry about that.
No. People need to be more responsible. This is not an act of a responsible society. And I'm telling you, if it becomes a problem for himself, well, I at least warn him.
You say that like he was gunning to get HIV.
He had sex with a guy he knew had HIV. Like, why? Why would you do that?
I don't know. Maybe he swept him off his feet.
Oh, can you stop joking for just 1 second? I mean, I get he's your friend, but God, can't he leave some of the gay men around here for the rest of us?
Wait, what? The guy you were talking to?
No, the one he slept with.
Who?
What? Is it that hard to pick out from your bunch of HIV friends who it is?
I don't have any friends with HIV.
Well, I thought you were friends with your roommate.
The initial reaction was to be expected. My dad was upset, my mom was crying. It really sucked for a bit. But just like they told me when I came out, they eventually sat me down and told me that they loved me and that they would never abandon me. They were scared and felt helpless. They just needed to be educated on HIV. I had to educate them. I told them we could eat out of the same plate and drink out of the same cup, all that stuff that people would initially fear. And they understood, and they've come a really long way.
It took me 4 years to tell anyone. And I kept thinking, no one is going to treat me like a normal person. And that's exactly what happened. The stigmas, it's really heavy in my family. And my father's brother, my uncle, died from virus complications. And I never remember my dad ever going to see his brother when he was sick. Never. And to this day, my mom cannot say HIV. And I try to explain to her it's not a bad word. It's something we can talk about. And she's always, oh, your condition, or oh, your illness. And I'm like, I don't have a condition. I don't have an illness. It's called HIV. And it's okay to say. And I don't know if it's her trying to deal with it, or if it's a stigma as far as her not being able to say the word. But I do know that I was treated differently in the beginning, mainly for my mom and my dad.
I told my closest friends first. I also told the people I would see on a regular basis in my circle in New York City. It wasn't until much later that I told my family, but I really couldn't deal with hiding it from them anymore. The interesting thing is my family's not the kind of family that would kick me out because I was gay. It was more that we had just lost someone to AIDS, and it was one of those very long, drawn out, horrible, wasting processes. Knowing that my family had just experienced that, it made me afraid to tell them because I knew that they would go to that place. As I mentioned before, it's a real victim's mentality. Like I'm going to give you sadness, and I'm going to give you worry and all that stuff. And I realized I should have been thinking the opposite. It was a lot about stigma, but it was a self-imposed stigma, a lot of shame, and that was a really, really long process.
After I was assaulted, I remember the first number that I told the ER to call was my mother's. When I woke up from the hospital, I saw my mother sitting by my bed. That was really the first time that she came back into my life. It took me a long time to decide to come out to my parents as being a woman. And when immediately following, I tested positive. That was just as hard, but looking at it now, I caught a virus. It's no different than any other communicable disease. And when we discussed this, I realized that HIV was not a consequence of my choices, but a symptom of the condition that put me in that place. Had my family been accepting and loving through that time, I could have been less discouraged, and I would have had a safety net to fall back on. From that understanding, my family and I started to mend our relationship. I then connected with a therapist and a medical provider, and I began to attend a substance abuse program. And I soon started to feel that I was surrounded by support, not from trans people, because there wasn't a lot of trans people around, but from the people who understood each other. And I felt that I was back in a very safe place where I could focus on feeling.
Do you have anything you want to say?
No, not really.
You sure? Nothing to get off your chest, Harold?
Nope.
That's funny.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, it is.
Is there something wrong?
I talked to Craig today.
Well, that explains it. That guy has bad news written all over him.
Same could be said for you.
What does that mean?
You can stop playing dumb now. I know you have HIV.
How?
How do I know? That's a great question. You know, I'm almost surprised I didn't find out sooner since you slept with this whole town.
Chris.
Let me ask you something. Were you ever going to tell me?
I was only telling the people that I needed to tell.
So the strangers that you decided to sleep with had more of a right to know than I did? I thought I was your best friend. I thought you trusted me. But I guess not. Okay. Thanks.
I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings. You just weren't ready.
Don't tell me you hid this shit from me because of me. I have to tell you if I'm going through shit that will affect you, but you can keep this from me? You know, people think I have HIV too now because of you, but I guess I wasn't ready to hear that either. You know what? Fine. I don't care. I'm done.
Like, oh my God, this is really happening to my brother, to my family. It just made it real. And it made it like a tangible threat. But I think one of the hardest things about this is that his HIV really is, it's a family secret. We come from an Italian Catholic conservative Republican family. God knows where me and my brother came from. I mean, the only people in the family that know are me and our one uncle, who's also gay, and an ex-drag queen. For now, though, it's better off this way, I guess. I hope someday it'll be easier to talk about these things. Well, I hope for the world. For our family, it seems impossible, but who knows?
I later joined a ministry in the Houston Medical Center where we worked with a priest. I naively thought that people who were religious couldn't be nuts. So I thought, okay, this will be great. We started training with the priest, and I'll never forget it, he just had horrible things to say about the people after we would leave the room. This one in particular, a man who maybe had 2 days left to live, no one went to visit him, not even family. He was at the tail end of AIDS. Could have been anywhere between 22 and 50. The disease just ravaged people. He had the lesions all over him, and he was all eyes and cheekbone. I remember his face to this day, even though I maybe spent a minute with him. I remember the fear in his eyes. And the fear was palpable. We stood at the entrance. The priest wouldn't even let us go up to the bed because at the time, they thought even the molecules of saliva in the air could infect you. And so, he just goes up to him, "How are you feeling?" This man was just out of it. And as the priest and my husband and I went up to the bed, I touched his arm and I said, "God bless you." And the fear in his eyes dimmed away, if only for a moment. When I went out of the hospital room, the priest kind of yelled at me. He said, "You need to get to a bathroom right now and wash your hands. I'm going to go now too. I hate being in these rooms."
Look, if someone gets HIV through no fault of their own, then I can have the utmost sympathy for them. However, I think it's an appropriate consequence for the careless actions of a person who's driven by sex.
Like I said before, I'm very private. I don't scream it to the world. You can't look at me and be like, "Oh, you know." And when I let people know, I've gotten negative reactions, gotten positive reactions. No pun intended for either of those. Oh, and I love this. The other day, I was on Grindr. Don't judge. And I got this message from this guy. First, it was kind of cute. He was all like, "Handsome, blah, blah, blah. What do you like to do? Blah, blah, blah." But then he sends me, "By the way, are you clean?" What? What the hell does that even mean? Are you clean? So I responded back, "Sure am. Just had a shower this morning." Yeah, he blocked me.
I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat. My dad's a preacher, and I have had to deal with stigma in the church. And I think that's the problem with organized religion today. It's about religion and not a relationship with Jesus Christ. And the church that I belong to is all about that relationship with Jesus Christ. It is such a sad state of affairs when Christians who are supposed to be doing good things for other people have a negative connotation amongst HIV positive or AIDS persons. I would definitely say that the first thing that we need to work on is reducing stigma in the religious community about the illness, letting go of man made rules in our church and trying to really look at the heart of who Jesus was. And so that's for us to help and really love each other. And I think we're on our way.
I think there's a lot of what I call chosen ignorance, and ignorance breeds prejudice, and there are people who choose. And as long as you have chosen ignorance, you will have a stigma.
Hello. My name is Jeremy. I like long walks on the beach, foreign films, as long as they're subtitled anyway. No, LOL. Let's see. I'm a retail store manager, have been for years now. I'm 31 and dreading it, and I have HIV. There's no way of knowing how long I've had it. I contracted it during what was a dark period of my life. I've suffered from clinical depression since I was young, and I ended up eventually turning to drugs because it was the one thing that ended up making me happy. So that's basically how I got it. My main concern when I found out was for my boyfriend. I could have really have cared less about myself. The reason why I cleaned up my life and got off drugs and started getting myself together was meeting my boyfriend, my now fiance. He gave me a reason to try harder, to push more. He was there and he was wonderful. When I found out I was HIV positive, he reassured me that he was gonna not gonna leave, that he still loved me and always would be there for me. I think I cried more when he told me that than I did when I had to tell my diagnosis. And lo and behold, we got lucky because he got tested not long after and he's negative. Whatever we're doing things right.
We're both HIV positive. Well, technically, we're both living with AIDS. We both are. We both had AIDS at one point, and once the government puts you in that category, that's where they keep you. I developed AIDS in 1997, and Brian around the same time. I think he was down to one T cell at that point.
Hey, Jimmy wasn't too far behind.
But it was right around the time the cocktail came out, and all that sickness, why it just disappeared.
I was never a big dater. I was never a big hang out in gay bars type of guy. And then I discovered online dating. Perfect. So perfect because you can say in your profile, hey, I'm HIV positive. Yes, there is bullying, but you know what? Then you know who all the douchebags and assholes are. You don't have to deal with those people. The people who freak out, they're not going to make you waste your time. And the ones who don't care, they'll answer your profile. And I see that as a blessing in some ways. That's how Jimmy and I met online.
Years had passed since I dated anyone. I, I had become a recluse, because of the shame of my status. But one day, a dear friend of mine, he said, well, that there was this fur ball at the LGBT center, and why didn't I come along with them? And I was like, well, I didn't bring a fur. And they said, no, silly, it's for people who are into hairy people. So after the ball, I thought, well, maybe I'll give this site a shot. So I put up my picture and some information, and right there on my page it said, I am 20 years silver and 20 years HIV positive. And that's when I got the message from Brian. I'll tell you, the one thing that impressed me, aside from the fact that he was just stunningly handsome, that right up front, in his profile, he said, I am HIV positive, and if that is a problem, you just move on. Right up front. And I was like, oh, God bless him. He and I were the only two who were honest about our statuses on that site. And I'm telling you, there were thousands of people on that website. It was fate.
We met on 11/11/11, and it was magic. And we were both AIDS survivors. We had so much in common. And he was just the greatest guy. My last two relationships with negative guys, having a man who is HIV positive, it made all the difference. It eliminates the stupid, unnecessary day to day. You know, whose razor is that? Whose toothbrush is that? We got engaged on Valentine's Day. And we got married last August, exactly 25 years ago, to my first AIDS diagnosis.
It's amazing. I love being with someone who is open and honest. I'm so proud to be a survivor. It makes all the difference in the world.
He and I have been engaged for years now. I would love to get married. I just want to make sure the time is right. I want it to be the best day of our lives. I love him, and he is my soulmate. And oddly enough, I really believe this experience that we have been going through together has helped us realize that even more.
How?
It's okay.
No, it's not. I should have been there for you.
I didn't mean to hurt you. I should have told you.
No. This is all my fault. I shouldn't have had to tell. You shouldn't have had to tell me. I think I was just hurt because I didn't think that you trusted me to care about you. And then I went and proved your point. I should have been more open. I should have shown you that I'd be there for you if you needed me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I should have told you.
You're an idiot. You don't have to be sorry about anything. I was just a little hurt because I wanted you to know, because I thought that you didn't know, that you didn't think you could come to me with something like this because you're my friend. And then I just went and did the complete opposite because I'm a jerk.
It's okay. I'm just not good at opening up to people. I didn't want to burden you. It was bad enough burdening the people I hooked up with.
Yeah, I should have thought of that before. I mean, I guess I wouldn't want to tell anybody else if I didn't have to. Did any of them give you crap?
No. At least not like you did anyway.
That's good. Hey, wait a second, you meanie. I said I was sorry.
You're hugging me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, champ. You can listen now.
Hey, my name is Nestor, and I was born HIV positive. My father cheated on my mother, and he contracted it. He then gave it to my mom, and my mom then passed it on to me. No one really knew until I was about 5 years old, and when they found out, I started taking medicine. It wasn't until I turned 15 that my parents told me my status. I was a young heterosexual guy. When I found out, I was scared. I grew up in a very low income, closed minded neighborhood. That, and because my mother had dealt with it so much, I felt like I had something to be ashamed of. I didn't want to tell anybody. So I pretty much had to stick it out for myself. I can only think of one time when I was younger that I tried to get help. It was when I was in middle school. I tried to reach out to an LGBT student group because they had a support session for people with HIV. Now, I don't have anything against the LGBT community. But at the time, I was angry. I felt like I couldn't relate to anybody because everyone I met there was either gay or on drugs. And it was hard for me to be around, the other HIV positive people. They all had contracted it from their actions. To me, it was like, you guys had a choice. You had a chance. I didn't. This was born into me. This was something that was forced on me. And now I have to deal with it. At least if it was, because of something that I did, I could own up to it and take responsibility. But I had no choice. People would say,
Oh, it's a gay disease.
You have HIV, so you're gay.
and I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I like girls. And it hurt. So I closed myself off. I was 19, and after I graduated, I went to nursing school. During that time, my mother died. She hadn't been taking her meds. She developed AIDS and got pneumonia. I fell into depression, and my grades in school began to slip. I had to talk to my teacher at the nursing school, and after I confided in her, she brought up a new discussion in class.
Should someone with HIV be allowed to become a nurse?
They should wear armbands to keep them distinguished from others.
The teacher didn't say anything. I walked out of class and I cried. I ended up getting a case manager who works with my doctor, and she is so great. She ended up helping me find a support group. The group is made up of a bunch of teenagers born with HIV, just like me. They needed support from someone older just as much as I needed it. And I learned from that experience that I like talking to people. So now I go to schools in low-income communities and I share my story. I share the information that I've learned. And it's a good experience for me knowing that I can help people learn. I also am working with LGBT groups because now I know that we aren't so different and we are working towards a common goal. It doesn't matter if I'm not gay. Most importantly, I learned to accept my status. Oh, that, and I also have a girlfriend now. She's awesome and accepting. And she gave me the best advice the other day. Anger is something you shouldn't have. We see it as a weapon to protect us, but really, all weapons do is destroy. We don't need destruction.
In the early days, there was a look. There was a loss of weight. They looked tired. People acquired an ashen gray complexion and sunken eyes, and many people visually looked frailer. That certainly does carry a certain stigma. And people would joke about it. Oh, you want to lose 20 pounds? Try lemonades. They made weight loss jokes about it. And of course, before we knew what we know now, it was always associated with the gay man. Oh, that fag is sick. He must have gotten it. Back then, most people weren't diagnosed unless there was something that triggered a response. They became ill with something else, and in the process of analyzing that, then the HIV diagnosis became a reality. This was back in the 80s, so the drug regimens hadn't really been established. Survival at that time was pretty grim. A diagnosis was, for many years, a death sentence. You knew when, but you didn't know how. So, once diagnosed, it became a real fear for everyone.
The first drug was called AZT, and this was back before employer-centered health insurance. A prescription for AZT would cost about $2,500 a month. Who has that kind of money? Anyway, AZT would maybe extend your life for like 6 months to 2 years, if you were lucky enough to get it.
was 2011. I was at the doctor's again. Went through the whole round of tests, blood work. They took 12 vials of blood. I'm not a fan of that. Like 12 freaking vials, really? And I had to be conscious for this? And afterward,
You've been getting more sick frequently. Your current CD4 count is at 365. If it drops below 200, you'll end up being diagnosed with AIDS. And then it's really only a matter of time. Or we could start your treatment regimen. It's not that much. 2 pills a day, and then you're set to go. Really, this is much more manageable than, say, being diabetic.
manageable? How do you figure HIV can become manageable?
Because if you keep on your meds, you can eventually become undetectable.
What?
Undetectable, as in an undetectable viral load. People who are HIV negative will have no viral load, but if you're HIV positive, your viral load will have the chance of being really high. And then your CD4 count will be really low, which means you're more susceptible to opportunistic infections. But if we put you on the antiretroviral medications, they will work to keep HIV from reproducing in your body, which then lowers your viral load. But how does that sound?
I gave in. And it's true, my meds have helped. Actually, with the meds I'm currently on, I've had no issues at all. And I'm undetectable, which is great. It wasn't really that big of a deal, but I will say that going on the medication, that really made me have to face it. It's no longer just a little piece of paper with a plus sign. This is a part of me. And it's not a mark I can get rid of.
Lately, I do wonder if we are heading back in the opposite direction. I think we know how to fix it and know how to make it livable, but because of that, I feel like we as people don't care as much anymore. All of this stuff we were doing seems to have gone away. I see incidents growing and statistics still showing an uprise in HIV infection. Heck, I've even had friends who have died from the medication. It's not like, oh, life goes on happily ever after.
Kids today don't know what the old fights were. And sometimes you have to relive that for people because they don't know. My friends were dying every week. Churches wouldn't do funerals for them. Churches would want to burn the bodies immediately because they wouldn't want to touch them. Things were closing down. The River Hotel that I was working at closed down because things got so bad they had to turn it into a hospice center. The whole city was closing down. The city of New York was all about living with this disease. It was very real. And I moved here from New York City because I couldn't take anyone dying anymore. But others stayed. They were able to stay and they fought valiantly. They took this issue head on and they brought it to the place it is today. And it was, the steps they took are unbelievable. And I want all of those newly diagnosed who are living with this disease today, I want them to know that you cannot just sit by and let these issues dissolve. People fought for you to get here, and you need to thank them every single day for that. Continue their fight for HIV awareness. It is your lineage now. They fought so you could live.
You've got to have balls. You just got to have balls, and you can't care what other people think. You just can't, because you'll drive yourself crazy. You are who you are, and God don't make junk. But if you want change, you have to be cognizant of yourself. You need to plant a seed, and it doesn't happen overnight. You have to try and make each generation better than yours. You've got to just Be educated, and it starts at home. The young can educate the old, but you have got to keep up the fight because we do get set in our ways. You guys just got to keep up the fight.
I had a dear friend named Mark Goldstab. And the last time I saw him, I was passing him on the street with his partner, Edmund, and he looked at me and he sort of went ashen and said, "And how is your health?" When people ask questions, "How are you doing? How have you been?" It's a greeting hello. If it's, "How is your health?" it's a genuine concern. And only afterwards did I realize that his asking me about my health was really his way of asking me if I was a part of his world. It was a brief moment. And I never saw him again. Mark's mother, Sylvia, wrote a book called Unconditional Love. And in that book, she dealing with Mark's diagnosis and demise. She became educated and thus was able to be there for her son. She wrote her experiences down so we can become educated, so we don't stay ignorant on the issues that HIV positive individuals face, especially if they are loved ones. This is how the experiences in the past need to affect our future.
One Friday night in late June 1987, 2 weeks after one of our famous parties, my world exploded. It began after my son Mark and his partner Edmund had driven from New York City to our place in New Jersey to join us for a dinner at home. Just as we finished with our coffee and dessert, Mark asked if he could have another cup of coffee and if we could sit down. Then he said, "Mom, I need to tell you and Dad something that is very important." Expecting cheerful news, I smiled, sat down and said, "Okay, son, I'm all ears. Tell me the news." It must have been my motherly instinct which caused me to ask, "What's wrong, son?" And then Mark, with his bearded face and beautiful eyes, looked into our faces, and like the man he always was, he firmed up his voice and shared his heart, mind, body, and soul. I have AIDS. Mark continued to talk as I flooded him with questions. I was hearing his voice, but my mind was in such a whirlwind, I couldn't grab the meaning of his words. Inside, I was churning. My consciousness and sanity seemed to be losing control. Suddenly, tears burst and I began to shake. Mark came to my side, held me, hugged me, and shared with his own tears. Later that night, as I lay in bed next to Bernie, I tried to sort things out before sleeping. I could hear Mark's reassurance, and it was endless. "I'm doing fine now. Medication helping. Power of mind. I'll make it through, all 5'10" of me." But in my grief, I wondered if I had actually heard him say that, or if it was all just a bad dream. Mark suggested that I get in touch with an AIDS support group for parents who have children living with AIDS, and I did. And I found out that everything Mark had told me was true. They gave me comfort. Every question was answered clearly and with patience and kindness. At the group meetings, young people with HIV and AIDS would come over to me and ask how they could talk to their loved ones about their life-changing disease. All of them needed to be loved. Not ignored, not stigmatized, not deserted. Loved. And I could feel the sunshine of the love blanketing everyone there. And it changed me. I was grateful I had the benefit of that experience. Reach out to your loved ones. Tell them that you're still here. Help them with love. That was their message, and now it is ours. On Wednesday, December 14th, 1988, our phone rang, and my champ was gone. During the previous months, I called him champ for his winning out many trials. He was so proud of that title. But I think Mark would be very proud of the legacy he left behind. He is still my champ. With age comes more wisdom, and this wisdom gives us the courage to take charge of our lives, to make decisive steps that lead to action. I know I am capable of helping others understand the issues of HIV/AIDS. I am making a difference for my son. I am his voice. I am the voice of so many people who lived their lives without the love and understanding of others. People need to understand that their family and friends living with HIV/AIDS need them. They must have unconditional love. That will forever be my mission, to help others find that.
When looking at my future, the one thing that I had to face was my own mortality. And I realized I can very well die. I'm 28 years old and I can very well die within the next 5 years. No matter how much medication has advanced, my chances of death have increased. But I'm optimistic about me still being around and treatment being just as good, if not more advanced. In the meantime, I very much plan on living my life, doing my thing, and not letting it get to me. Graduating from college, someday, eventually, someday. God, I've been going forever. But I'm not scared of it. The main fear and concern is over my loved ones and how it would affect them. But I can take care of myself. I've been doing it for a very long time.
The reason why I do this work is to put a face to HIV. It can happen to anybody. I call it free therapy. I'm in there sharing my story because I didn't have the opportunity to sit where they're sitting and see a person in front of me sharing something so personal. And knowing that I can tell my story and knowing that other people are hearing my story, it's therapeutic. And the thank you letters and the questions that people send me, it's great. People reach out to me, people add me on Facebook. Sharing my story makes a difference, and it's a really, really good feeling for me.
I think that the more we hear these stories, the more opportunities we have to connect with another person. And it's the same when we start to share our own stories. It's the risk that we take, but I think in the end, it will pay off and maybe even save a life.
I've had a very good turnaround. I'm back in school. I just got my associates at the end of the summer, and I'm going back to school for my undergrad in public health. I've gotten into work that I love. My video blog is going on strong. I get to be a voice for people, to reach out to others. Really, because of this journey, I'm just a better person.
My sons are now 7, 8, and 12. I'm also remarried as well. I don't really experience the stigma anymore. I see things in media and I see things in society, but Monique right here doesn't really experience that anymore. Love came my way. June 8th, 2011, me and my husband were married. And I just feel so blessed. I think that's why I decided to open up my own organization, because I'm the type of person who wants to help those who don't have it like I have it. I want to be able to reach out my hand and say, if happy can happen to me, then it can happen to you too. I need to help with this fight. I'm not exempt.
My life as an HIV activist has been extremely fulfilling on a personal level. And it feels like I'm actually taking care of myself in the process and also helping the bigger picture, because I knew that if I didn't get involved in the fight in some way, that I probably wouldn't get what I need to stay healthy. So it's a wonderful thing and a really special process when somebody identifies and someone says, okay, I'm getting inspired by this. And it's almost as if you find your reason for having HIV, like a sort of very personal journey.
If you encourage with kindness and understanding, it makes those living with HIV immediately vocal in their community. They're not afraid to talk about it. In fact, they're all about telling everybody in the world their story and what they went through, and they become these little warriors all over the place, and all their friends. HIV becomes real for them. All their friends, they understand now what HIV is, because they know who Johnny is over here and who Leroy is over there, and that's what starts breaking down stigma. Stigma, it creates isolation and fear. But this creates real dialogue.
To all those that do not live with HIV, I feel that we are called to love others with compassion, void of stigma and prejudice. This is especially true of those that are infected and affected by HIV and AIDS, who often feel isolated. Step out in love. Change your community, one person at a time.
To those living with HIV, I want you to know that there is light at the end of a very deep, dark tunnel.
This isn't a death sentence. It's just a new life, a new beginning. It happened. Stay true to yourself. You can do this. I do it each and every day.
I'm living a normal, healthy, happy life, and I'm gonna live to my 80s, 90s, 100s. Who knows? I'm going to live just as long as anyone who doesn't have it, or be cryogenically frozen. I don't really know if I want to be cryogenically frozen, but you get the picture.
My favorite saying is, you must first love yourself. You gotta really love yourself and accept who you are as an individual, no matter what society says.
If you infect somebody with encouragement from the very beginning, then they begin affecting people. And I really think this could bring the end to HIV in our lifetime. I really do. This is how I got it. I am not going to die. I am still going to be me, and I am still going to be awesome and a baller and stupid, and it's just something I'm dealing with. You don't have to be worried about it. And the same goes for all of those living with HIV. You're going to be okay.
My mom always used to say to me, no matter what, never let anything get you down. Don't let HIV get you down.
People that I met who were living with the virus touched me in my heart in ways that changed me forever. I would encourage them to open themselves up to people, whoever they are, no matter what things in life happen to be. And most importantly, realize how much of a difference that lack of stigma makes.
Now we are actually at the verge of beginning that fabled end to AIDS. If we have a cure within my lifetime, I would die a happy queen. I'd feel like I lived through a novel written by Tolstoy. If I get to see the beginning of its end, or at least close to the end. Huh. What a thing to have witnessed. One of the things I've learned on my journey is the people who come into your path for this kind of thing are meant to be there. So it's sort of like there's a reason why we are all talking about the same thing. Everything happens for a reason. And I'm so happy to be a part of it.
You know that you will always, no matter what, have me to count on, right? And whatever choices you make in terms of treatment or coming out to the family or whatever, I will always be there for you to have your back and support you.
Yeah, I know.
Look, I want to thank you for kind of opening my eyes to the whole thing and the whole disease in itself and seeing that things have changed.
My opinions were certainly dated. Like Angie said, I will always be there for you if you need me.
Thank you.
Were you afraid of how people would react?
I was pretty confident with how my friends would react because of the kind of people that they are. I know there are some that worry, and I try to tell them not to. But I do have friends who sometimes forget I'm positive and make inappropriate lifespan jokes.
That was one time.
2. And you know I would tell anybody else who is positive. If they're really your friends, they're going to stand by you no matter what happens. And if they don't, then that's just something you need to get over.
Do you think you'll ever get the others to totally understand?
I think ultimately only someone who is HIV positive can understand it to its fullest extent. There are things I can't talk to other people about unless they are HIV positive. But it's important for people to understand as much as possible that to not only realize how things have changed, but that the stigma for HIV is as much of an epidemic as HIV itself. If we're going to get rid of this, people need to realize that this virus doesn't define a person. It's like having brown hair. It's not a dominating force in my life. I just happen to have brown hair. When it comes down to it, whether I like it or not, whether anyone likes it or not, this is a part of me. Not long after I tested positive, I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, I don't look any different. I don't feel any different. I don't feel positive at all. I don't feel plus signs coursing through my body or anything. Now I look in the mirror and despite these marks, I see the same person that I was.